Hello, I am the Morpheus of money because you need to know. You need to know that we're living in a matrix, right? And you're the energy source. And we started to unpack that in the last video. And once you understand how the matrix works, you could learn to navigate successfully through it, or B, escape it altogether. Okay, so just real quick, right? You ask yourself, why do the rich get richer and the poor get poorer? And through every crisis, the rich come out ahead and the poor come back out further behind. And we're actually coming into a banking crisis right now, and the results are going to be the same. The rich are going to come out ahead and the poor are going to come out further behind, unless you know how the system works and you could prepare for it. Okay, so what is the matrix? And how are you the energy source? Well, the wealthy, for the most part, are wealthy because they own three assets: real estate, businesses, and credit, right? So the wealthy are the landlord, the employer, and the lender, right? But what do the landlord, the employer, and the lender, and also the merchant, right? What do they need for their empire? What is the energy source of their empire? For the landlord, it's tenants. Without tenants, their empire has no energy. For the employer, it's employees. For the creditor, for the lender, it's borrowers. And for the merchant, it's customers, right? So they use you to empower their empire, right? You, the tenant, the employee, the borrower, and the customer. And how do they turn you into a tenant, an employee, a borrower, and a customer? By wastefulness and futility, right? These are the highest virtues among the wealthy, right? And they display their wealth by being wasteful. They display their wealth by being futile. And they have this extravagant lifestyle, right? That they put on display for the world to see. And then the world aspires to that. I would like to live like that one day. Just wasteful and futile and on my yacht and, dining from delicacies and from around the world, right? And because you want to be like them, then you become wasteful and futile, and you will never be able to spend what they spend. And by you spending on that, what it will prevent you from doing would be acquiring assets, acquiring real estate, businesses, being a lender, right? And so by them promoting wastefulness and futility, they insulate themselves. They put a moat around themselves, and it would prevent others from challenging them for their supremacy. Right? And they're constantly feeding you with the message, just go ahead and live it up, right? Because when you do, you'll never catch up to me, and you will always have to go work for me. And you will always have to be my tenant, because you will never be able to afford to get out of that borrower situation, or that employee situation, or that tenant situation. Because why? Because you spend it on trying to be like me, if only for a weekend, right? So who are the agents of the matrix? The agents that make sure they keep you in the matrix? They are the promoters of that lifestyle, right? The influencers of that lifestyle. And I'll tell you a story. Early in my career, I started my career as a financial planner back in 1991. And I grew up in this city called Chula Vista, which is a suburb of San Diego. And growing up in this suburb of San Diego, most of my friends' dads worked in one of two places, a good chunk of them. They were either worked at the Navy, because there was a huge Navy base there in San Diego, or they worked at this company called Roar, which was a aerospace and defense contractor, which had a huge plant there in Chula Vista. Okay, that's where a good chunk of them worked. Okay, I grew up in that kind of middle class environment. So fast forward, after I got out of college, I got this job as a financial planner, and I inherited this client who lived in Chula Vista, and guess what he was? He was the general manager of the Roar factory in Chula Vista. He was the top dog at that Chula Vista factory. He was the boss of a lot of my friends' dads. Okay? And, you know, as far as Chula Vista is concerned, he was doing very good. This was back in 91. He was making over $250,000 a year. And he was, you know, as among people that lived in Chula Vista, he was making a lot of money. Let's put it that way. And he had a really nice house. I went to his house and we sat down and we reviewed his investment portfolio. And he said, here's what I want to do, Jonathan. I want to take some money out of my house. I want to do like a equity line. I want to pay off some debts and I want to invest some money with you. So I was excited because he's going to invest some money with me, right? So I said, okay, let me put together a plan for you. I'm going to go back to the office and come back with a recommendation. So I go to the office and I'm going through his file because he was an existing client that I had inherited. Somebody had left the company and they gave this guy to me. And the year prior, he had done the same thing. He had taken money out of his house to pay off some debt and to make an investment. Okay, and 2 years earlier, he had also done the same thing. He had taken money out of his house, paid off some debt, and did an investment. And so when I'm looking at more detail through the notes, the plan both times was to get this guy out of debt, right? That was a cornerstone of the plan, to get this guy out of debt. So I started to ask myself, why a year later was he back in debt? Okay, and why am I having to bail him out of debt again if the guy before me got him out of debt a year earlier? Okay, so I called him up and I said, hey, I'm working on your plan. I started asking him some questions. And I kind of uncovered what was going on. Now, keep in mind, I'm this kid right out of college, 23 years old, living with my grandma, right? And he's one of the top dogs of Chula Vista, the boss of many of my dad's friends, right? So consider the dynamic of where he is in life and where I am in life. And I'm, quote unquote, a financial advisor. Oh, that's what it says in my business card, and that's what I've been doing for a few months. But and you know, take that title with a grain of salt. But I knew enough to at least have the title on my card, right? So here's what was happening. This guy, being, you know, one of the top dogs in Chula Vista, his social circle, the friends that he hung out with, were not other people from Chula Vista. The friends he hung out with were people from Coronado. Now, Coronado is also a suburb of San Diego, and it's a little wealthy beach enclave, right? And so, while he may have been a big dog in Chula Vista, when he starts hanging out in Coronado, he's not a big dog. He's not even an average dog. He's below average in terms of, wealth and income. So in him, by him hanging out with these people, he has to spend like they spend. And he can't afford it. He's spending all the money he has and then some, and he's getting himself into debt every year, right? That was the problem. That was the problem. So I had to tell him, and I was nervous. And I don't know if you ever saw the movie A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. And Tom Cruise was this young hotshot lawyer, and Jack Nicholson was this high-ranking colonel. And Tom Cruise said, "I'm putting Colonel Jessup on the bench." That means he was going to interrogate, this young lieutenant was going to interrogate this colonel. And they said, "You ought not to do that," right? And I said, "I have to, I'm going to do it." And the scene where they're in the courtroom and he pours himself a glass of water and he's shaking like that. And that's how I felt. I'm going to have to tell this guy, "You need to control your spending, buddy. You're not as rich as your friends are. And it's getting you into trouble. And if you don't fix it, it's going to be bad." And so I said, but how do I say that? With finesse and diplomacy, with tact. And I practiced in front of the mirror, and I was nervous. I had to go back to his house and tell him the news that he needs to get his spending in check. And I did, and it was scary, but I did it. And guess what? He listened. It was the crazy thing. He goes, "Okay." And so a year later, when I went back and I said, "Know what? I'm going to do this for you this year." This is one of the first time I said, "I'm going to do this for you this year, but next year I'm not going to bail you out. You cannot be in debt when I come to see you next year. And I want you to have some money for me to invest." He did. A year later, when I came back to review his portfolio, he was not in debt, and he had a check ready for me to invest. And good thing that he did, because this was 92 now, and there was this big banking crisis, and the houses had gone down in value. He had tapped his equity the year before, and there was none left to tap if he would have needed it. He would have been in dire straits. But he heeded my advice, and he did not get in debt. He actually had some money to invest, and he was fine. He made it through that financial downturn. And so, who are the agents of the Matrix? You could say his Coronado friends were the agents of the Matrix, and they were evangelists of the gospel of wastefulness and futility. And he had gotten caught up in that. He had gotten caught up in that false religion, and it was putting him into debt to where he had used up the equity in his house. Fortunately, he had a good job and benefits, and he was also investing on the side. So he was able, they were trying to plug him in and take his money out and prevent him from ever becoming wealthy. by promoting that wasteful lifestyle. And so I want you to see it for what it is. And in the next video, I'm gonna play a testimony from Kevin Hart, who got into a similar situation, and he was being attacked by an agent of the Matrix, and he escaped. Okay, if you ever watched the movie, they told you beware, because anybody could be an agent. And if you're ever, they told Neo, if you ever run into an agent, run, right? Run, because they're coming for you. So I want you to be able to identify agents of the Matrix. And when you see them, run. Over time, as you continue to watch my channel, you will develop strength and skill, and you will be able to stand and fight. But for right now, run. Eventually, after watching this channel, you could be like Neo, and you could just be standing there like this, deflecting the attacks of the agent. But you're not there yet. You need to keep watching, and for now, look around and ask yourself, could that person be an agent? And if they are, run. And continue watching. Like and subscribe, share it with your friends, and we will develop you over time. Are you the one? Are you the Neo I'm looking for? Will you be able to fight off the agents? We'll see.